Up to 98% of what our brains are doing is subconscious. And in this episode, I'm sharing the psychology behind powerful communications, including the 7 forces that help you win over any audience. I'm sharing this as a guest on the Real Relationships, Real Value podcast with the incredible Mo Bunnell, one of the world's leading experts on business development. Together, we get into build trust instantly, frame conversations the right way, get seen in a crowded market, and make your ideas so clear that people act on them. My name is Oliver House, and I've helped over 11,000 leaders master communications, and this is Speak Like a CEO, the show that helps you become a top 1% communicator.
Everybody, what if I shared with you the one limiting factor that happens every time as a team scales? An internal team, an external team with a client trying to grow a practice area, a new product offering, things like that. Anything that requires multiple people. There's one limiting factor that always happens, and it's communications. And today I've got Oliver Oust. He's the author of, I think, 5 business books, Oliver. Is that right? I don't even know how. I didn't even know how you're cranking them all out all the time because they were like back to back. But the one I really loved is called Message Machine. We're going to dive into some of that today. But because Oliver works with the same kind of people we do, high-end professionals, high-end leaders in large service-based companies, professional services, things like that, our clientele overlaps 100%. And Oliver can pull from his other content to help us with anything we've got. So Oliver, why don't you just start with why is it that communications is this scaffolding that if people don't build it right, everything falls apart? Why do teams fail because they don't communicate well, either externally or internally? Tell us more about that.
Leadership at the end of the day is communication. And this is what we do. As a knowledge worker, we spend 88% of our time at work communicating. Think about this. What did your grandparents do for work? Maybe they were on a farm, maybe in a factory, but communications-wise, it's probably pretty simple and straightforward. My grandparents worked on a farm. My parents worked in an office, but locally, same language, same people every day, same time zone. Now, we all work in international, potentially global businesses. We work with different generations. We work with different clients, with stakeholders, with regulators, you name it. It's a highly complex communications environment that we have created, which brings many benefits at work, of course, but it is so complex now that it's very difficult for people to navigate. And that is the reason why, in many cases, communications, especially when you're in a leadership role, becomes the bottleneck. You need to take your clients, your customers, your stakeholders, your team on a journey so they go out of their way to help you achieve your goals. And of course, you want to help them achieve their goals as well. So that is the challenge we all face at work these days. And the challenge doesn't get any smaller with AI and all the complexity and the swift changes we see in the world.
I love that, Oliver. I really feel like there's some meta skills that thread through everything. So like communications is one of those. Habits is one of those. Staying consistent through habits is one. And the thing I think that's interesting about communications is it's often hidden. Meaning somebody will say, gosh, our marketing materials don't really land well because we haven't figured out our product or service offering, our messaging, our fit, things like that. Or they'll say, gosh, we're just not winning in pitches because we talk too much, or we don't design a great experience or whatever. Or for internal meetings, we hear things like, yeah, people just aren't doing the things that I need them to do. It's their fault. But the thread through all that stuff is communication. So don't you think this is one of those skills that if we can get better at this one thing, I'm always looking for leverage. If we can get better at communications, leadership communications, external, internal, everything we do gets better. Your thoughts?
100%. I mean, it is leverage. Communication is leverage in this world we operate in. And you rightly said it's a skill, right? It's a set of skills that we can acquire. So it doesn't matter where you are today in terms of your leadership communication skills or your sales skills, etc. You can acquire these skills. And I think that's good news. When you look at someone like Steve Jobs, he started out as a terrible communicator. If you can check out the first interview he gave on TV in the 1970s on YouTube, it's terrible. He said, I'm going to throw up, where's the bathroom, right? And he obviously became this iconic communicator on stage. So we all have a journey in front of us. And I think the first mental shift is, hey, let me work on this. This is a skill set, and it's actually not that complicated. I can learn it. I've learned many more complicated skills than that. I know how to communicate. I'm maybe okay. I'm maybe at level, 8 or 9, but I can be a 10. I can be a top 1% communicator. If you communicate well, what your working life and also your life in general, your family life, it feels like you're pushing a boulder down the hill. But if you're communicating, let's say a level 4 level, you're pushing the boulder up the hill. So everything gets more difficult. And if you have a level 10 technical skill set, but your communication skill set is at a 4, guess how people will perceive you? As a 4, at least if you're in a leadership role. So often that becomes the bottleneck. The good news is we can do something about it.
Oh man, you just reminded me of this research report. I think the authors of the research were Sharma and Patterson. I might have that wrong, but I think it's right. And they said something like this: effective communications, and the word consistent was in there. Consistent and effective communications were the number one correlation to client loyalty, even more than technical expertise.
Yeah.
In fact, when they did the regression analysis, they found that people that were consistent and effective communicators, people actually viewed their technical expertise as better. So communications, especially when done well and consistently, like we're saying, staying in touch over time, not only helps people view you as a good communicator, it actually makes you look smarter than maybe you really are. So there's not many things in life where you get a 2-fer or a 3-fer. This is one. Well, some of the things we're going to talk about are like, I'm so glad we've thought about what we're going to share today. Like you're going to share later on how to prepare for a speech in minutes. We're going to talk about product or service offering and marketing fit. We're going to talk about what is brand and how do you communicate it well. Bunch of stuff later today. But I think it's important to start with what you call 7 key factors in the psychology of communication. So could you just, maybe you just run through those quickly, and I might pick a couple that I think are the most interesting.
Absolutely. So I picked out 7 in the book. There are more, of course, right? We can talk about many different aspects, but let me preface this. You want to understand them so other people can't manipulate you. You want to understand them so you become a better communicator, but always use them in an ethical way. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, but also there's something called reactance. So you can use all sorts of psychological triggers, and we know a lot of people out there who say, hey, use this, use urgency, use scarcity, use this, use that. And, sometimes there's a case for it. But it can also lead to reactance on the other side. Reactance is the psychological term for, I don't like this, I feel manipulated. So we always want to use them when they are true and when they are ethical. So if there's urgency, fine, let's use urgency, but let's not invent urgency because smart people will see right through it and it will make the sale or the deal much less likely. So I think that's important to frame this conversation.
Well, and Oliver, if I can just jump in, I think that headline, I know it's an old saw, but people hate to be sold to, but they love to buy, is appropriate here. And Bob Cialdini and all of his research of influence found that when you use things like scarcity, as an example, one that he used, if you use that authentically, it's a positive. If you make it up, everybody can smell it from a mile away. They feel sold to and they want to run. So it actually can have detrimental effects also, to very, very strong ones to not do these well. So back to you.
Absolutely. So the first point is always clarity, right? If we're not clear, people won't buy. A confused mind never buys. So clarity is important. It trumps complexity. In fact, there's something called the complexity paradox, which means the more we tell people, the less they understand. So saying less, but using clear terms, atomic statements, as Will Storr put it, atomic statements, if you can put a lot of meaning into a simple sentence, a simple statement, then you're onto something good. So clarity trumps complexity. I would mention value as well. Value is important. It will never go out of fashion. Value will always be valuable because no one cares about our company or product, even though we think it's the best thing in the world. But people care about what they get out of it. So value is very important. We kind of know this, but we often forget it. When we talk about the features and the bells and whistles on our product and our services, great, but what does it do for me? That old marketing question, what's in it for me? We need to answer this and answer the value question.
And I'm going to, Oliver, I know I said I was going to let you get through all 7.
Go for it.
I got to riff on some of this stuff. It's so good. So some practical tips that people can take away. So our first 2 are clarity and value. Clarity, I think one practical tip people can do is save time at the end of a meeting to recommend a next step and make it clear. So little phrases like, hey, we got 10 minutes left of our 1-hour call. What most of our clients do next is blank. Just give them one option. Like, it's so clear. Everybody wants to make progress. If somebody wants to buy from us and they're just not sure how much to bite off, that can happen from time. Like, we want to use you. We're just not sure if we want big or small. Then providing 3 options can make sense. Small, medium, large, good, better, best. So making things as clear as possible really helps. When you talked about value, the second thing, that made me think about Cynthia Kreider's research that found when we share our own accolades alone, it can actually be a detriment to us. It can sound like we're bragging. But when we convert that accolade to a benefit for the other side, it's a massive positive. So if somebody said, hey, you might have seen they might be their high stakes antitrust lawyer. You might have seen this particular case where the FTC in the US, tried to block a certain thing. Well, I represented the other side and we got that through and here's what we did. Well, just sharing that can sound like bragging. But if we then say, and through that process, we really learned the inner workings of the FTC, we developed relationships with those folks, and we know exactly where they're headed in the retail industry over the next year, given the new administration. That's important for you because you're going to want somebody like that guiding you that's not guessing, but knows. So converting accolades to benefits seems like the way to go for value. Your thoughts on that before we go to
No, absolutely. And I love your cliffhangers at the end of meetings, which you outline in your book. So I love those. And you can indicate the value at the beginning already, right? So when you start a meeting, a conversation, say, hey, from my perspective, our goal today should be X, which indicates value. So the next 30 minutes will be full of value because, hey, I want this too. And if they don't, they can say it right there and then. And we can work towards a common goal. So that's very powerful as well. So always think about the value, what's in it for the other person. Give first. I know that's your philosophy in life as well. You give to grow, and I'm very much behind that as well. I think this is the right way to live in my view. And it is also just happens to be good for business too.
Yep. Okay, go to the third thing.
Right.
This is great.
Connection. Connection is so important. We often think about perfection, right? Just perfecting my craft, perfecting the business, perfecting the product, having the perfect conversation. Now, in communication, there's no such thing. There's no perfect speech, presentation, or conversation. But what there is connection. So always aim for connection, not perfection. How do you do this? Well, obviously, you meet the world with an open eye and an open ear. You listen. You introduce yourself properly, but you allow the other person to explain what's on their mind, how you can help them. So trying to create connection. I think we do know this as human beings, but sometimes the transactional nature of business just gets in the way. I don't think this is a skill we need to develop. I think we have the skill, but it may be underneath, some skills that we have acquired in the meantime and we've forgotten about it. So allow yourself to be connected to the people you work with because it will make everything easier. In any conversation, there are 2 dimensions, right? There's the content dimension, the information we exchange, great. So that's one part of it. But the other part is the relational dimension. So the connection we create. Always think about those 2, right? What do you want the audience to know, feel, and do? What do you want the person having the conversation with to know, feel, and do in 30 minutes? That's a good question to ask yourself to guide a conversation towards a mutually beneficial outcome.
Oliver, it's so good. And I love how you phrase this in this chart. And for those that, we've got 2 channels, one audio and one that's audio and video. So the video folks can see this. But I just love how you summarize certain aspects of the book where you make this simple. We're walking through this. So we're on the third element, connection. The way you define it is so good and aligned with what we teach and what our audience believes. Focus on the content and the relationship.
Yeah.
And I love, this is the only word on this page is where you capitalized it, and. Both need to happen. I really picked that up because what our audience can do is over-bias to one or the other. Get into teaching mode. I'm going to share how smart I am, all the stuff we know. Only content, you don't connect, not good. Only connection is bad because then you're a nice person, but you're not needed as an expert or a professional. Both are important. A great meeting has a little bit of both, don't you think?
Indeed, absolutely. You want to be interested, you want to be interesting as well. So if you're only interested, that's great, but you may be a fan or follower, you may not be seen as an equal partner. So you also want to be interesting. And this is what charismatic people understand, right? They're interested, but also interesting. So that is, hopefully something to keep in mind because charisma, terms like that can be very elusive. But if you think,
yes,
I'm interested in Mo and I'm interested in the person I'm meeting today, but I'm also interesting. I have an interesting life. I have interesting things to share and I will share these. and maybe think about these points before, well, that can help to create a really interesting bond with another person.
So good. Okay, go on to the fourth. This is all
Right.
fantastic.
Fear, right? Fear, scarcity. Often fear is used negatively. You can sell on a fear basis, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but it is something to understand that we are, as human beings, often motivated or held back from action by fear. So if I understand the fear paradigm of the person I'm talking to, that is extremely helpful. Give you one example. So let's say you're trying to close a deal, you're speaking to the other person, and it's not quite clear why they don't come through, right? Why is the deal not coming through? I would think about the internal and the external dimension here. The external objective of that person may be to grow the business, and you think, well, our deal would make sense from that perspective. But what's going on internally? Maybe the person fears this deal won't give the desired results. Maybe it's seen as a little risky, therefore my position may be threatened. Or maybe I'm worried that I will lose my job due to AI. Maybe I'm worried about, not getting that promotion. So to understand these internal motivators, which are often fear-driven, especially in large organizations, can be extremely helpful. And it requires a bit more contemplation about them because the external ones are very clear. Well, they're public usually. Our business has the objective to achieve X this year. Okay, very easy to understand. But what's going on inside this other person who takes the decision is less clear. But as smart human beings like your listeners and your audience clearly is, you can find out by talking to other people. You can find out by just applying common sense to what the other person is saying and where they're coming from, right? Maybe reading between the lines, really actively listening to that other person. So fear plays a big role in interpersonal communication because at the end of the day, we as human beings, unfortunately, are often fear and anxiety driven. And this day and age, unfortunately, is quite heavy on these factors.
Yeah, Oliver, what you made me think about, I haven't thought about it in a long time, is a lot of times people share objections or fear in a very nuanced way.
Yeah.
So if one of a top tier management consultant is talking to a potential client and they're talking about a cost takeout project or a strategy project or whatever, the client might ask something quite nuanced. Is like, well, hey, I'm just curious, like how does your team interact with our team? Well, that's not, you don't want to go straight to an answer right there. You want to say, hey, tell me a little bit more about that. Why did you bring that up? I got a lot to share, but it's in that second order question that we're going to find out that they're really worried about how their team's overworked and they're worried about people leaving and they're worried about this is extra work on their load. Or it could be 50 other things, but we want to know what's underneath that. But there's a fear that's underneath that question that's quite deeper than just what the surface question was, and digging into that, unpacking a little bit would then give us the answer that they need as opposed to what we might guess they need. Thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the flip side of that coin is that why don't we become bold and fearless communicators, right? Because I think people are attracted to these bold and fearless communicators. We're not getting defensive. We lean in.
Yes.
Oh, you're expensive, right? And this is straight from your playbook, right?
Yeah.
You're expensive. You lean in. Yeah, we're not cheap. We're not trying to be the cheapest. We're trying to be the best in the field, right? So you lean in. You're fearless as a communicator. That is attractive to people.
Yeah. So good. Okay, go to the next one. This is so great. You're killing it.
Oh, thank you. Differentiation, very important. If you think about branding as marketing, as how to position your product, if it's not different, how are we even thinking about this? The brain has a tough time processing better, but it's really good at processing different or other, right? So for that simple neurological reason, differentiation is a key factor in communication, and especially in branding and marketing. Hey, we are different because, I had a great conversation with Laura Rees on my podcast, Speak Like a CEO, and she wrote a book, The Strategic Enemy, that really hammered home this point. Have a strategic enemy, Boeing and Airbus, Coke and Pepsi, you name it. It's very easy for the brain to understand Nike and Adidas. So, I'm one or the other. Nike isn't saying we are better than Adidas. They're saying we're different, right? And that makes sense for the brain. And then I can select myself in or out. Oh, this brand is for me. This brand isn't for me. And that makes it very simple.
You just gave me something that I realized I've done and I had no idea why it was working. I want to do it more. But it's a lot of times people say, hey, we went through such and such sales training. They actually used those words, sales training, a few years ago. And there were some okay parts of it, but honestly, it just didn't feel like it fit us really well.
Yeah.
I was on a call yesterday that they said that and said, well, yeah, that's because a lot of sales training, and I always put like quotes around it really big, like on Zoom or in person, they were usually built for products where the salesperson makes a sale, goes away, and never talks to the person again. Meaning the relationship is never even discussed. And if it is, it's about usually cheesy manipulation stuff like scarcity, like all the depth, all the you're being sold to stuff, the bad version. I said, our stuff from the very beginning was built as the relationship being paramount and the sales actually being subordinate. Now we're going to teach how to build relationships that result in winning tons of work, profitable stuff, the stuff you want, but the long-term relationship has to be paramount because you might meet somebody that isn't in a position to need you now, but 2 years from now, they could be your biggest client. So you've got to develop that long-term relationship. And when you thread that through everything as the number one thing, that's a real differentiator for us. I said something like that yesterday on a call and everybody's like, oh my God, that's why we didn't like that other thing. Now we want your thing. So what did you call it? Have a strategic enemy?
Or it's not Mo, it's Laura Rees's work called basically Have a Strategic Enemy. The book is called, I think, just Strategic Enemy or The Strategic Enemy.
Is she out? Was it Jack Trout and Al Rees?
She's Al Rees's daughter. Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I met her one time. Yeah.
She's fantastic. She's fantastic. You should talk to her on the podcast. She's fantastic.
Yeah, I should reach out to her. That'd be funny. I was like literally like 25 years ago when I talked to her on the phone once. Yeah, so have a strategic enemy. Is that what you called it?
Yes.
Brilliant.
That's the mantra.
So in this case, it's like, and what was great is a lot of times people say, you don't want to trounce or you don't want to badmouth the competition. What's great about what we're talking about here is you're never going to name one entity or one organization.
Yes.
You're going to name a category of organizations. And that way you can position yourself uniquely against them, don't you think? And it's not a negative. Whereas if you would mention an exact other organization, it would seem weird. Probably not something we want to do. Your thoughts there?
It's not something you do because that doesn't appeal to customers, right? And consumers. What appeals to customers and consumers is to be clear, we are not that, right? So if you are Coke, you position yourself differently than Pepsi. Pepsi says we're different, or Apple says think different. They're not saying, they didn't say at the time IBM's rubbish. They said think different, right? You're different. You're the maverick if you choose one of our products. So it's implicit, but the consumer gets it. And that's also true in B2B and professional services. This is true in any field. And let's say you're an agency, you're running an agency, and you have a different approach. I would clearly say, hey, we're not your classical agency. If you're looking for a classical agency to do X, Y, and Z for you, that's not us. We are a consultancy who's specialized in this one thing. And if that's what you're in the market for, we are your people, right? So, as you said, it's a category question often, or with consumer products, it can be a bit more explicit.
Yeah, that's perfect. And it might have been Al Rees and Jack Trout, of course, Al being Laura's father, that said everybody's got like a product ladder in their mind. And they're just trying to figure out which ladder you're on and where you're at on the ladder. So this having a strategic enemy helps say, we aren't this, but we are that. Really, I love how you said the brain's hard at figuring out if you're the best, but it's easy to figure out different. Well, once there, they can ascertain if you're the best or not.
And that's why so much branding and marketing is so bland and doesn't work and is so expensive, right? Because especially large organizations, conservative organizations, they have a hard time standing out. It's all about standing out and being different, but the instinct is to be safe and be among our peers. That's the conundrum a lot of organizations find themselves in. But at the same time, often you have a new, let's say, CMO coming in and they want to change things even though things are working. So you also have to be careful in that direction. But being different, being clearly differentiated, and being able to summarize the differentiation in a simple sentence, that's golden.
I love this. Okay, 2 more. What's our 6th one?
We have to talk about trust. Trust obviously is hugely important. In a way, you can't really have a relationship if there's no trust, whether that's with your team, whether that's with your clients, with prospects. It's not possible. If there's a lack of trust internally, we see teams breaking down, things move very slowly. It's all about, covering your behind rather than moving things forward. If there's no trust between you and your clients or customers, again, that's really, really bad. So how do I build trust? And, building here on the work by Stephen M. R. Covey, fantastic person, also my podcast, he made a very good point of saying you have to be trusting and you have to be trustworthy, right? You have to be trusting that you're trusting the other person. So it's not true in his view, and he's probably the leading, person in the world, leading thinker on trust, the author of Speed of Trust and Trust and Inspire and so on. And he says, well, you can obviously build trust over 6 months, but then you lose 6 months. Why don't you trust the other person? And by being trusting, you also become more trustworthy, right? So you're extending trust first, and the other person will reciprocate. And then you're building a trusting relationship very quickly. So that's the key, he says. Don't wait 6 months to build it slowly. Be trusting, but also be trustworthy. And, the simple truth, as we all know, if you want to be trusted, just be a trustworthy person. Do things the right way, and people will trust you because you haven't disappointed them. So, and this comes down to simple things like, I send you this by Friday, you get it by Friday, right? Always do what you say. And this is what, I tell my team members and others as well. If you don't get the little things right, people don't trust you with the big things. So you want to build and establish and keep the trust by sticking to what you said, even if it's a minute detail. But if you said you would do it, just do it. Really quick, in this episode, we talk a lot about frameworks that help you clarify your thinking and your communication so you get stuff done. I collated the best frameworks in the whole wide world in a single document. You can download it for free in the description below.
I'm trying to think of like a practical tip for each of these. One thing I learned a long time ago, because I'm really good with strategic thinking. I'm not good at figuring out how long things will take, especially when combined with all the other things. So I tended for many, many years to say, I'll have something to you by this date, and I would choose too soon of a date. And it wasn't out of like anything other than I just don't think in Gantt charts. I just don't like, it only takes 10 minutes to do that follow-up, but I didn't think of the 27 other 10-minute things. So saying I'll have it to you by 5 isn't good. So one of the things I've been doing the last several years is I immediately think of a time I could send something to somebody, and I either don't give one or I give a date that's like 3 days later. By myself sometimes. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
No, I learned the same thing the hard way. And so, for instance, I never say I sent you this by Friday. I always say by the end of the week. So if I have to, I can sit down on a Saturday morning for 10 minutes and just do it. And it's still what I said I would do. But give yourself more time and then rather, create a positive surprise.
I think we win the fact you send somebody early, not by working harder, but by choosing a later date. It's the deadline. Okay, last thing, framing. So good. Tell me more.
Framing, and I would pair it with priming. So priming is even more primal. It is this good or bad, right? And for instance, we're probably going to talk about structures and how to create speeches and presentations and so on. The key question I always ask myself, is this a positive start or a negative start? To make it tangible, do I start with a problem? Do I prime the audience in a negative way? Or do I start with the vision, the positive, exciting thing we're going to work towards? That's a positive priming. And this is very primal and very important. And people, I always use problem, solution, benefit. Great. But that means you always prime the audience in a negative way. Is that really your intention? So what I'm saying is be intentional. Sometimes it's great to prime the audience, say, hey, we're looking at this problem today. I think we can solve it in this meeting. But sometimes you want the positive vision, especially internally when you're talking to your team. Don't always start with a problem. So that's priming, very primal, good thing, bad thing. And then there's framing, which is more specific. So when I say a certain word, let's say startup or CEO, that's a frame. So immediately in your mind, there will be connections and associations. Startup means, Silicon Valley, and it means funding, and it means, fast moving and breaking things, and all these associations we have. And this is how our brain operates, right? So it is often said that the person who holds the frame wins the debate, even though we shouldn't think about winning debates. It's not about winning and losing in a debate, but you get the picture, right? It is very powerful and helpful to hold the frame. Classic example would be to say, hey, the client or the prospect says, hey, how much does this cost? You say, well, the investment would be, and the return on that investment would be such and such. So let's say we talk about coaching and say, okay, what's the cost of your coaching? So, well, I would look at this in terms of investment. You probably know the return on investment of your C-level executives because they obviously have a big lever and it's a big company, so their decisions matter. So in that respect, I could probably help them become 2 or 3% more effective and communicate better with the team, which means there's a clear ROI on that investment. That is a classic reframe from something someone perceives as cost to something that should be perceived as an investment that creates value for the business and almost is a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's so good. I like both of those. We talk about framing a lot in one of our modules and how to frame a meeting. It's in our module on how how to give a pitch, how to just have a normal little coffee chat, anything in between business development meetings, whether they're low stakes or high stakes. And one of the most important things to do in the first 5 minutes is set the frame. Like, hey, what are we trying to do today? And say, hey, just even if it's super informal at a coffee chat, like, hey, just really looking forward to hearing about what you're up to this year, what some of your priorities are. And I'd just love to find some ways to follow up and be helpful. I don't know what that is yet, but let's just have some fun with it.
Yeah.
So just having a little, even if it's a super soft, that lets the person know why we're there. The thing I hadn't thought about as much, I have a little of intuition around this, but I could do it more as the priming idea.
Yeah.
Is say, really looking forward to this is going to be a lot of fun. Then set the frame. Or if it's a problem-solving meeting, setting that emotional trigger. It's almost like the prime is the emotional frame. I know I'm mixing metaphors probably, but is that right or not?
Yeah, I think you're right. And when do you use which? So the problem framing is and priming, and then to say, hey, the framing is we need, I don't know, new coffee machines in the office. That's great. Frame that as a problem. The coffee machines break down. We need better ones. No one's going to be shocked. No one's going to think, oh God, I'm going to lose my job, right? So that solvable problem is often framed and primed in a negative way. It's primed in a negative way and framed as a problem to be solved in this meeting. Now, leaders sometimes apply this to the bigger vision. Let's say it's a typical narrative you hear a lot and which usually backfires, which is our industry is changing. We need to change, otherwise we're screwed, right? That's a short form of a narrative that a lot of leaders are using because they think it's motivating. We need to understand the significance of this situation and make the most out of this. The problem is it triggers fear and it triggers resistance. And people who worry about their job or, move their attention to finding a new job or whatever, they're not going to be their best self at work. They're going to help to solve the issues at hand. In those cases, it's much better to honor the past, for instance, and say, so far we've done an absolutely stellar job in 2025, right? And you acknowledge that sincerely, and then you move on to the challenges, but you start in a positive way, or you start with a positive vision. You could say 2026 could really be our best year ever, right? So you set a positive vision. And the next stage may be to say, hey, but clearly there are challenges on our way. It's AI and it's, insecurity in the supply chain, whatever it may be. The challenges are easy. They're always there. And our mind is, usually fixated on that. But to start with a positive vision, that's usually something we overlook, but it is extremely powerful.
Yeah. If I go back to hey, coffee machines are breaking in the office. Setting up as we got to fix these coffee machines, that's going to there's our emotional, we got a problem. That's the priming. The frame is we're going to solve this problem today. A different version of that would be like, hey, I know the coffee machine's been breaking. You know what? I think there's a silver lining to this. I'd like to rethink the entire experience of our break room and our ability to drive culture by people bumping into each other and, as they get a cup of coffee or a soda or whatever. I'd like to rethink all of that. Let's think today about what can we do as an investment to drive more collaboration and a better work experience through the fact that we all drink caffeine. And you're like, there's a totally different meeting that's going to happen now.
Yeah. You moved it to a much higher level. I love that. It became a conversation about purpose rather than about coffee machines. What can we do so that teams mingle more and their minds colliding and we can become more innovative? I love that.
There you go. And so, of course, that I was just picking up your example from before, but that could be on an entire strategy for an organization. We need to your point, we need to fix this thing that we're all broken and we need to fix ourselves versus there's a big new market we can go capture. What are we going to do? Completely different interaction that you'd imagine. And then that same thing would be true of client meetings too. We're helping. I never really loved the idea of find their pain points. To your point, like as a frame for a business developer, yeah, sometimes people hire professionals because they got an issue and it needs to go. I totally get it. But a lot of times people hire professionals because they want to achieve more than they ever could without them. And I'd much rather work with those clients typically than somebody makes an issue go away. So anyway, I love the idea of it could be either or. Okay, that was awesome. I'd like to move though to this idea of how to prepare for a speech in minutes. Different topic. I loved this. And again, for our video watchers, there's just a beautiful diagram for this. For those following along just on audio, driving down the road, whatever, I know you can describe this in words, but this is so good. Can you just walk us through this?
Absolutely. So people spend too much time preparing for presentations, decks, etc. So here's a very simple way to think about it. Your job is usually to move people to action, right? It's not to pass on information. You can write an email to give someone the information, but if you present, if you speak, it's about moving people to action. So you start with your headline. What's the key message? What do you want to get across? So it could be something like 2026 could be our best year ever. So, okay, this is the message I want to give to my team on Monday morning. Right. Okay, cool. What now? You pick a structure, and I have a whole ebook of 21 storytelling frameworks, which I'm happy to share. And maybe we can link to that. But let's say,
I want it.
yeah, you know,
Keep going.
it took me hundreds of hours to do this, and I'm just giving away. So it is actually very valuable. I wanted this for myself because if you read a book about storytelling, the author usually gives you one framework which is useful, but you need more than one framework because you will be in different situations in different contexts. So you need at least like 3 or 4 at your disposal at any given time. So let's pick one. The Hollywood 3 actor: excite, disturb, assure. You say, okay, could be the best year ever. You're exciting. And you start off by saying, this year we have a great opportunity to double the business. Markets are opening up. People want what we are building. This is going to be a really exciting year for us. However, and this is where you go to the disturb part, there are 3 big challenges we have to face. We need to onboard new, A players quickly. We need to ensure the supply chain is sound, and we need to solve our warehousing issue, whatever it may be, right? So challenges, always easy. They're always there. And then you go to the third act, which is assure. It's like, but I do think, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that we can solve this if we follow this plan. And here it comes. And then you get to the logical part. So you frame the issue emotionally. People are excited and they see there's a plan to make it happen. And that's the beautiful thing. And in the end, there's usually call to action to say, okay, let's get to work. Next step is 1, 2, 3. This is how you do it in minutes. You don't need slides. You don't need a script, God forbid. Don't use scripts. Don't try to learn anything by heart. You use a structure like that. And as I just did, I just made this up, right? 1 minute, 2 minutes, and you're good to go. And people will see you as a top communicator because you can capture emotions, you bring the energy, and you stay your message, but it's in an energetic way, right? And this is kind of the sweet spot. I talk about the 3 levels of speakers. First level is the rambler, right? Yes, they talk and talk, but they think while they talk and they never get to the point, and they lack clarity. And as we learned, clarity, without clarity, don't even start. Second level is the robot, and that's the person who has all these elaborate slides with lots of words and lots of graphs, teleprompters potentially, or a script they try to learn by heart on Sunday night, and because they read through 20 times and they're recalling it from memory. But it's very hard. It's very time consuming. We don't have time for this in reality. And secondly, if you recall from memory, you're not getting the passion across. You're lacking emotion. And there are neurological reasons for that. But you can either be passionate or you can recite from memory. Okay, actors can maybe do both, but that's why acting is a profession and people train this for years until they get good at this. And this is not what we do in business. We don't have the time, we don't have these skills. So the simple way is to just skip these steps and become a level 3 speaker, which I call the raconteur. So Rambler level 1, the robot level 2, and the raconteur, the storyteller, is level 3. And you work with structure, not scripts. And you know this from business development as well. Scripts, okay, maybe if you sell mobile phone contracts, okay. But for high-ticket professional services, etc., you want to listen, you want to have a conversation, and people don't react well if you read a script, right? So trying to be that level 3 speaker, someone who works with structure, who's very clear about the beginning and the ending, and we can double-click on that if you like, because that's really crucial, but can speak freely and is still on point.
So good. So if we broke that down into just 4 pieces, piece 1 is you got to get people's attention. Yeah. We could call it you call it the key message or the hook. It's something that grabs people's attention. And I usually by the way, we need to avoid my name's so-and-so and I do these in the beginning. Man, just start with the hook right away.
Yes.
You've got a challenge, or you deserve to make an impact. Today, we're going to talk about something that just drops right into the action.
Yes.
So a key message or a hook. The second thing is, in your model, have 3 points, not 4, not 2, not 17. Like, what are the key 3, if you will? And go through those. And I noticed even in your example, you're signposting. Hey, I've got 3 points. Here's point number 1. You say, okay, that's the end of point number 1. Here's point number 2. It's basics, it's table stakes, but almost nobody does it. In verbal communication, the listener needs to know, where are we? There's no roadmap up there. So we need to say, that was point 1. Let me move on to point 2, signposting. So thing number 2 is 3 points. Thing 3, and I love how you did this, something that brings it to life. Maybe it's a story, a personal anecdote, a killer fact. Maybe there's some research you can quote. Maybe there's some data nobody's seen before that pulls it to life, or something that like brings it to life. And then that's the 3rd thing. And then the 4th thing is, what do I need people to do?
Yes.
And you get really specific around that. Call to action, whatever you want to call it. So thoughts on like, what are your thoughts on like, of those 4 things, that's your flow. Every time, real easy. You can sketch it out. Just think about it in your mind. What do most people get wrong?
As you said, they start with an introduction. 30 seconds in, you lost half the audience and you haven't made your first point, right? It's just, hello, So we don't want to do that. Secondly, what people get wrong is that there is no call to action. They think of this as an information piece. But again, why are we all here? This is not an effective way to pass on information. Send an email. So the point here is the goal, move people to action. So that is a second mistake I see. And then I see a lot of fact telling. Now, I always say that in presenting and speaking, you want to work with human biology, not against human biology. What do I mean by that? Well, against human biology means you give people 28 facts. We all know that we can't remember 28 things in our short-term memory. We can maybe 4 or 5. So why would I give people 28 things to remember if that is simply impossible? I don't. Instead, I don't fact tell, I story tell. And I package my presentation, my conversation as a story. I just did this. Excite, disturb, assure, right? This could be one. Dream, nightmare, action. Problem, solution, benefit. Or something simple like what, so what, now what. You can see often they have 3 acts, 3 steps, which are prompts for us to storytell rather than fact tell. So cut back on the facts, give more stories. Is that soft? Is that fluffy? Gosh, no. This is how humans think. It couldn't be any harder, because a fact embedded in a story, according to research, is 20 times more likely to be remembered. So if you want your facts to be remembered, just embed them in a story. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be a simple customer story. What's a story? A story is a tale of transformation. So if you think about that, okay, the beginning is one thing and the ending is the opposite. So if the ending is client happy, then the beginning must be client not happy, right? So what happened between client not happy and client happy was probably what you did together, right? So this is a simple way to create a quick story. You can do this off the cuff. It doesn't need a lot of preparation. Once you understand what a story is and just the steps to structure it. Very simple once you internalize it. But as you said, very few people do this, but it's a very simple skill we can all use and apply to great effect.
Oliver, so good. I'd like to go a touch deeper on the key message or the hook, that beginning. Because as I just reflect back of all of our clients here, we train 60,000 plus people. So I've seen a lot of people present in classes on one thing or another, and they're communicating, and almost nobody gets this part right.
Yeah.
They don't, to your point, I think what people think is, I just walked up on stage, the whole audience is looking at me, I've got their attention. You do not have their attention. They might looking at you, but are they thinking about their shopping list? Are they thinking about what they're going to do this weekend? Are they thinking about that email they got to reply to? Even if somebody's looking at you, it doesn't mean you've got them. And what will get somebody is a hook. So can you give some examples of what can get a hook, and maybe give a couple scenarios? One could be a high stakes speech with hundreds of people. Another could be a one-on-one coffee chat. Maybe you just give a bunch of examples.
Absolutely. So I think the first question you ask yourself is, do you give people an ice cream cone or sledgehammer? So positive or negative? And the ice cream cone could be something, let's say you're addressing your team and you say, hey, last month, the way we completed this project on time, on budget, and won these new clients, absolutely splendid. I haven't seen anything like this in years. So big round of applause to everyone. So then you give people an ice cream cone. That's a nice hook. People like hearing positive things about themselves. And if it's true, obviously, then it's a good way to start. You can also use a sledgehammer and say,
can I jump? Let me jump in. And I'm trying to lather on some curiosity too. So let's say in that scenario, a client team leader, a practice area leader is having a big meeting, and they want to talk about how we won that work, that we know we won the work. So I like the idea of the ice cream cone, and I wonder if there's a way to layer in some curiosity, like, hey, I was debriefing with Sarah about, it's been a 2-year march to win that piece of work. She actually is going to present today on 3 things that she did that nobody knows about. We actually worked on this with Sarah. She's going to share 3 things that nobody knows about that she thinks were inflection points in winning this work over the last 3 years. I think you're all going to find this interesting. So is there a way to lather on some cliffhangers there or curiosity?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That was brilliant. I love that. Because
Yeah.
then you let the right person shine, right? And again,
Yeah.
this reflects positively on you as a leader. It's the right thing to do. So I really like this. So think about ice cream cones, beginning of conversations and team meetings, etc., especially internally, but also with clients. You can thank them for the trustful work we did together last year. If it's genuine. You can also do that with clients. It can be external as well, but especially internal. I'm always like to start with an ice cream cone.
I love it. Okay, sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer. Sledgehammer is something that really hits you hard, as the name suggests, and it's probably negative, right? Which means you get a lot of attention. It may not be the best thing to move people to action. So there's a bit of a trade-off here. But let's say you speak at a conference, you're on stage at an industry conference, say, 2026 will be the toughest year for our industry since World War II. That would be a sledgehammer, right? We're like, oh, I'm hit in the face. Gosh, I need to know why. What we're going to do.
Where does this
So in
go?
the next half hour, I will tell you why this is the case. The challenge is on the way, and who will be the winner, and how you can be one of the winners of this bloodbath in our industry. It's like, wow, I need to listen to this, right? So this is a sledgehammer that hits you hard. That will be also a hook. Now, those were kind of extreme example, extreme positive, extreme negative. If you want to look at hooks, go on LinkedIn and see how the top creators do it. The first 2 lines of text and the first sort of the big letters on the visual. Because people like me also create a lot on LinkedIn. You get so much feedback every day on whether your hooks are working or not. So it's a great training field, and you can learn a lot. It's the crash course on writing great hooks. Why do you say LinkedIn and not YouTube? LinkedIn is generally more positive, it's more business. YouTube is very fear-driven, so it doesn't translate that well into business. So I would look at LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, you have a gazillion followers on LinkedIn, don't you?
I do have a lot of followers on LinkedIn. Yeah, I post pretty much every day and have done so for years, so that consistency pays off. So I don't have any, hacky secrets or anything like that. I just show up every day. But so have you. I mean, you post great content every day, and I love to look at your content because I think it's extremely valuable, and often that's missing in the debate. There's a lot of inspirational stuff, and that's all good. But what you post is very value adding. It's not the, hey, look at me. It's, this is actually tried and tested and it works. And that is a great hook in itself.
It's been so much work, and we're learning from you. And of course, we comment on each other's stuff a lot. I looked at your stuff every day. There's something about that consistency of adding value every single day.
Yeah.
Just on LinkedIn, I think one of the things that we switched when we had about 15,000 followers 6 months ago. Now we'll hit 50 probably next week. And, I would expect 100 by the end of this year. It's making the post about them, not about us. How many people do you see that, like, look, I'm about to give a speech at a conference, or look, it's about me, or I get this accolade, whatever. And that's okay, but I just see those never really go anywhere. They get 1 repost and 3 comments or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody getting a new job. You should totally post that. Gosh, the world needs to know.
Yeah.
Those are going to get more of a flood of comments, not many reposts. It's the people that are making about their audience. Those are the ones that get tons of reposts, and that's what you're trying to do, and we're trying to do. Yeah, so I think, Oliver, one of the things that I've been really impressed by you is just the value you add on LinkedIn. But on this note of, it's not just you talking about yourself, every single point is adding value and written for the viewer, the audience, or the reader, not about you. And I think that's the biggest switch to be able to take LinkedIn for folks to the next level, is make it about your client or the person you're trying to attract and not about you. So good. And you do that. You show up every day and do that. So Oliver, gosh, you've mentioned a couple things already, like content. People are going to want more. I really like Message Machine, the book. Of course, it's one of 4. It's written for founders, just to be clear. So like how communications will make you an unstoppable founder is the word there. But if we just found and replace founder for expert, professional, practice leader, team leader, client team leader, all the stuff we talked about today is in Message Machine. And we covered 3% of what's in the book. So good. That's one thing. You've got all kinds of other resources out there. Can you just rattle off the different things that people might want from you? And of course, we'll put links down in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah. So people want to reach out. LinkedIn is the best place. Oliver Aust, Aust. And my brand is called Speak Like a CEO. It's speaklikeaceo.academy. I have an academy. I have a newsletter called Speak Like a CEO. And I have a podcast, a show, 300 plus episodes in, also called Speak Like a CEO, where I speak to world-leading experts on all aspects of leadership communication. So that's me. And I share everything I learn. I'm an eternal student of leadership communications, have been for many years. I just share what I learn, right? So if I have an idea and I'm diving deep and I find something that interests me, I share it with the world. So best place is there for LinkedIn, and from there to the newsletter if you want to dive deeper.
And the other thing I want to grab, though, is you mentioned something specifically, like it was a whole bunch of storytelling frameworks or something like that. What was
21
that?
storytelling frameworks, an ebook I've written, which we can happily link to. It's quite useful. I use it as my own cheat sheet, if you like.
Yeah, I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it in our little database, share with our team and all that stuff. Oliver, your stuff's just so practical. There's not many people in the world that work with the highest end professionals like we do and like you do. So I think that's why all the content, Message Machine, why LinkedIn, all the stuff that we've collaborated on, I think that's why it lands so well with me, is I know it'll land well with our people. So I recommend audience to check out all of Oliver's stuff. I'm a student of his work and just absolutely love it. Oliver, thanks for being on the show. It's been so fun.
Mo, thank you. It was wonderful having this conversation, and anytime. Looking forward to seeing you in person, hopefully this year.
I know. I think in April. So it's going to be great. All right. See ya.
Thanks for watching. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the Speak Like a CEO channel. It means the world to me, and it helps us keep bringing you world-class insights and guests.